Joining me in our session titled More Than an ERP Integrated Microsoft Solutions is Aaron Cameron, who is our VP of Sales. So thank you for joining us today, Aaron, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Melissa. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming and attending this session on more than an ERP. It's should be an interesting one, I think, for everybody. Full disclosure, like probably most of you, I'm working from home, as are my 4 kids and my wife, and my dog's not working, but he's home as well. So it's a full house around here. Hopefully, I didn't just jinx myself, and we'll have a whole bunch of noise in the background. But I think I've got everything calmed down enough that we should be able to pull this one off without too many interruptions. So I've got a few things I wanted to kind of go through with everybody today that's on the call. I wanted to start off with a concept from Microsoft called technical intensity and why it's important and its sort of emergence, I guess, throughout this pandemic. So as I kind of go through the rest of the content, have that concept of technical intensity in mind. Before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the integrated ERP solution, I did want to kind of talk a little bit about the cloud and how the cloud is the facilitator for a lot of the advancements that we see in the modern day ERP. So we'll lay a little bit more groundwork with that, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion. We'll give you a high level view of the full framework that shows sort of the accelerated ERP and how you can get more out of ERP than you have ever been able to in the past. And then we'll break down into very specific components and look at the Dynamics family of products, how Power BI, the Power Platform, Power BI, Power AI, Power Apps, Power Automate all play a role in extending the functionality of the ERP to a broader user community. And then I want to spend a little bit of time as well on Office 365 and Windows 365 and how those applications and the applications that live within those tool sets also help facilitate a better overall experience that you get within your ERP for your entire organization. We'll then wrap it up. I don't think we have any time for questions today, but as a follow-up, obviously be happy to answer anyone's questions that should come out of the content from today. So I wanted to start with that concept, that tech intensity concept. So this is something that Microsoft has been talking about really since the onset of the pandemic, and they've really incorporated a lot of their definition of tech intensity into the development efforts for their products. So my sort of summarized or simplified definition of technical intensity is largely it's an indicator of a business's capacity to innovate with technology, and in return, that technology's ability to facilitate and support the innovations that those customers come out with. So this became, as I mentioned, obviously very, very prevalent with the onset of COVID-19. And we saw within our customer base, largely two different types of clients and how they engaged under this technical intensity concept. At least those ones that weren't in industries that was very difficult to say innovate. So the two types of clients that we had were the ones that really spent their time in transitioning their technology from being on-prem to being remote, so that they really could facilitate working from home, and all of their effort went into just that shift from office to home. We had another set of clients who had already made that initial investment in cloud, and that transition from working in those brick and mortar offices to working from home was as seamless really as adding some additional licenses potentially, and really they were able to for the most part not skip a beat and still continue to work without a lot of hiccups. Those clients that were already had a higher degree of technical intensity were really able to focus on how they could shift potentially their business model into not taking advantage of the pandemic, but really shifting their business model so that they could survive throughout it. So those organizations were doing things like changing the nature of what they were manufacturing to align with the demand that the pandemic created for, say, um, you know, chemicals versus. So they shifted from an agricultural focus to a healthcare focus, and were able to have their systems largely almost on a dime shift to support that new business model entirely versus those other clients that were really looking at lifting and shifting their on-premise technologies into the cloud. Other examples of that would be, the movement of things, low-level things like, printing checks to rolling out EFT and ACH. So the speed with which we were able to deploy that en masse for a whole bunch of clients was, a really good indicator of how quickly we're able to take that technology and roll it out to clients so that they could, perform those at-home functions. So before getting into that specifics of the ERP, I wanted to start with a little bit of a conversation around cloud, because cloud I feel is the facilitator for a lot of those benefits that we get in the modern day ERP. But not all clouds and not all cloud ERPs were created equal. So just before getting into that, when it comes to ERP, historically clients would make a decision on which ERP they would go with, largely based on the features and functions that each ERP had, and ultimately how they best aligned with the needs of that customer. Because ERP is a very mature market as far as software is concerned, that gap between one application and another has largely been bridged. In other words, most mid-market and even enterprise ERPs are going to be fairly similar in terms of all of the feature functions that live within them is concerned. And so really an organization that is assessing ERPs from that context is not going to be able to find a whole lot of differentiation points for their business. There might be some differences for an industry-specific ERP, but those applications tend to be very fixed in terms of what they focus on, and thus can't adapt to new lines of business like the one I just mentioned in the previous slide. And so largely we don't see a lot of those industry specific ERPs largely playing a role or being as intense competitors as some of the ones that are more broadly focused. So I section off the ERP market space when it comes to cloud into 4 different sections. At the top of that list would be the hosted ERP system, which really I put outside of the little cloud graphic, because really in many senses really isn't cloud enabled. We're really just facilitating the underlying infrastructure. We're installing the on-premise application on cloud infrastructure, and yet we're still doing the low-level activities like upgrades and applying patches. Client is still on the hook for the cost of those types of things. Also, in that environment, you have 2 costs, and they're mutually exclusive. In that you've got an ERP cost and you have a hosting cost. So really, it's lack of a better word, a little bit fake cloud. It is a nice way of getting that remote accessibility, but it kind of ends there in terms of benefit. The marketplace, the next one down, is the tenanted cloud. So these ERP providers largely deliver their software as a service to the marketplace. So the cost of that infrastructure is in effect embedded within their software. But really what they're doing at the end of the day is they are renting space on someone else's cloud. That cloud may be Azure, it may be AWS, or another different cloud, but really they're largely hiding the infrastructure costs from the end customer and bundling that together. they're maybe doing a little bit of work to integrate with cloud to the benefit of that customer, but they don't own that cloud. They're renting space on it, and thus are a little bit less in control of taking advantage of all the cloud has to offer. The next level down would be the embedded version. There are very few of these providers. In this particular case, the ERP provider would also, in effect, own all of the cloud infrastructure that sits behind it. And so, in this particular case, they do have that ability to get a lot out of cloud computing. Where they differentiate themselves from the universal cloud provider is that they don't have the breadth of additional applications that also live on that same cloud. In other words, they're probably still using Office for workplace productivity. They're probably using different applications for custom development or reporting that aren't necessarily owned by that provider. Then we get down to the ultimate model, which is that universal model, which we'll spend all of our time on, of course, today. And in this model, there is, of course, only one vendor, which is Microsoft. But in effect, they own not just the ERP and not just the infrastructure of the cloud, but also all the other related applications that users use on a day-to-day basis. And because they own all of those technologies, they have the best chance of delivering the most value by tying them all together for the benefit of the customer. And that's where they create a unique differentiation point from other ERPs. It's not just on feature and function, it's on lighting up all of the other technologies to provide the best overall solution to the customer in the end. So now that we've laid a lot of groundwork, let's get into what some of those specifics are. So we're going to go into the layer around process and productivity in detail on the next slide, and then after that, we're going to go into the Power Platform slide. But there are a couple components that I want to talk about on this slide as a whole. So we talked a little bit about Azure as the cloud platform, and indeed that's what these applications sit on. Azure from Microsoft. Inherently, that provides global access for organizations to be able to access their solutions from pretty much anywhere in the world, while at the same time meeting some often stringent requirements around data sovereignty. So whether you're in the US or you're in Canada, if you have a requirement to keep your data on servers that are inside the borders, that is definitely available for you. In addition to that, world-class security is embedded within that Azure layer, and it's way more secure than you would be able to get on your on-premise solutions. So we found that a number of our clients that were holding on to those on-premise servers really had a change of heart when they were victims of attack of either ransomware or cyber attacks that often facilitated, in many cases, that shift, and very easy shift to the cloud, where they're actually, before they were feeling more secure on-prem, they're now definitely feeling a whole lot more secure up in the cloud. When required, we can drop to a hybrid cloud or even a on-prem if required. We highly don't recommend it unless there's a really good reason to do it. But Microsoft does provide that as an option for any client that is has a good reason to stay on-prem. That does then limit some of the functionality that I'm going to be showing off to you a little bit later. We're going to talk a little bit more, like I said, about that data intelligence platform in the next few slides. So I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to jump all the way to the top here. As I mentioned, the battle for ERP is not really being won within features and functions. That being said, Microsoft does pay attention to features and functions, and does innovate within its own applications, new functionality within their ERP offerings. But they also rely fairly heavily on partners like Encore and others, thousands and thousands of partners, to identify gaps within their application and build apps to facilitate those features and functions. So when we do look at how we stack up compared to our competitors in spots where there's a traditional gap within the core ERP, that's often already been filled or met through often free add-ons or apps from AppSource. It's also where you see partners take a very industry-specific approach to meeting ERP requirements as well. So it's a way in which you kind of get the best of both worlds in terms of that functionality. So just as a bit of an education point, the Dynamics 365 framework, we're talking a lot about the ERP, which is on the far left of the slide there, and Microsoft delivers, in terms of its Dynamics 365, really two ERPs, one right-sized for small and medium business, and that is Business Central, and then the next would be Finance, D365 Finance, and D365 Supply Chain. But D365 as a moniker includes a whole lot more than that. So while the ERP may focus on delivering largely transactional functionality to facilitate financials, sales order processing, purchase order processing, inventory manufacturing, project accounting, it does not pretend to be a true customer relationship management system or a sales automation system. That's what the Dynamics 365 for sales would largely accommodate. And that would manage your accounts and your contacts, leads, opportunities, communications, correspondences with customers. It handles the methodologies and facilitates tasks that streamlines your sales processes. Field service, while the transactions related to doing work in the field live within the ERP, the non-transactional work that happens in the field for things like dispatching, mobility, putting basically the technology as close to where the work is being done as possible is largely what the field service application helps our clients achieve. Customer service is again all around building cases that your clients or partners or the market in general issue with you, and your ability to run them through to satisfaction so that your customers are ultimately as happy as possible is another application, non-transactional, that really helps facilitate a lot of business processes outside the ERP. Project operations, much like field service, would handle again that scheduling, the critical path, task management, Gantt charting, just to name a few. Again, high mobility concept to put the technology as close to where the work is being done in the field. Expense management, time tracking are big pieces of what that application can provide within the overall Dynamics 365 framework. Human resources, pretty much people are at the core of almost every business. So that's a big component of the Dynamics 365 offering. Marketing, largely to generate leads and opportunities, better align sales and marketing departments for efficiency of acquiring new business. And then finally, commerce, which is really the e-commerce gateway to doing business with customers online, either B2C and eventually B2B. So in some cases, some of these applications that we're looking at are larger in nature. No one client that we have has all of these applications. I think probably some of the more complex ones might have 3 to 4, but you pick and choose the functional areas required for your business, and then we deploy basically those applications to suit your unique business requirements. Where there's a gap within these applications, we tend to fill that with either custom reporting type solutions on top of Power BI, or workflow with Power Automate, custom apps in Power Apps, and then AI we'll talk about in a little bit here as well, and its role within facilitating a really great ERP. In the future, Microsoft is working towards this concept of everything living on what we call that common data service. So this tier that ties all of these applications together to, in effect, to try to minimize the integration and best share data across applications, while still maintaining a lot of that data governance. Talk about this in just a tiny bit in the next, but it is still an evolving technology that really in future state, I think will lead to a lot of benefits within the full Dynamics 365 framework. So how Power BI and the AI Builder help with our solutions within ERP is largely what we're able to do with Power BI is we're able to take a standard reporting tool that many people know that is often has abilities for even customers to kind of create reports for themselves, and we use that reporting tool to embed back within the ERP reports. So what this means for organizations is they really can learn one report writing tool regardless of how many applications they have, but yet still create those reports and deliver them within the context of the ERP. We can even get to the point where it's context sensitive, where the record that you're looking on can reference a Power BI report, and again, you're still within the ERP system. The nice thing about that is that because Power BI lives both inside and outside of your ERP system, it's able to accommodate multiple data sources. And that means that through that Power BI mechanism, you can, in effect, marry data from multiple data sources, but yet still view it within the ERP. Most ERP applications will not be able to facilitate that type of visibility into other applications' data without performing some intensive data migrations in order to get there, which then gets you into some trouble with replicating data across multiple systems. That whole concept has really kind of driven down the need for us to build integrations where we're smart about it and we construct it in the right way. We're able to cut down drastically how many integrations we build. We're able to use a lot of this same type of functionality to minimize how much data we migrate when implementing a new ERP system. So instead of bringing over a whole bunch of transactional data, we're able to still reference the transactional data through Power BI, but do it through the lens of the ERP system, which is a really interesting concept. So these concepts have been around for a little while, as Power BI has been around for quite a number of years. But BI is in many respects looking backwards. Looking forwards is the concept of overlying artificial intelligence on top of that data to be able to be predictive in terms of whether a customer is going to pay or how much inventory you're going to have for a particular item. We can also use that to learn and create apps or chatbots and agents in that sense, and thus improving the experience that either users or consumers, your customers, will get out of the data that you're building up within your ERP system. The next would be Power Apps and Power Automate. So Power Automate is, in effect, its main purpose is as a workflow engine, but it also is an application connection tool that really looks to kind of streamline and make efficient processes, especially processes that cross applications. So while at its core it does workflow, you can initiate those workflows within, say, Dynamics, say for a purchase order or for a sales order to get approved. That can then leave Dynamics, go through its routing that lives outside of the ERP system, touch a number of users that will also live outside of the ERP system before it comes back with an indication that a purchase order has been approved. You can do some also other interesting things with Power Automate, given that it has hundreds of connectors to other applications, including social. So, for example, you can tap into LinkedIn and monitor changes to LinkedIn that automatically keep your customer database up to date without you having to do any data entry. It's things like that that really look to keep data up to date, but also not have individuals spend a lot of time updating that data or replicating data, in that case between LinkedIn and Dynamics. There's a whole bunch of different use cases for that. Out of the box, Dynamics has about 14 pre-built flows in that respect, but you can do pretty much anything you want with it. On the Power App side, it really is a no-code or low-code rapid development environment targeted at building out, and automating processes while keeping them tied to that core business application like the ERP. So really, we look to Power Apps to automate what we would call maybe more casual processes and non-transactional processes that are unique to your organization. It is also, because it's low code, no code, it is also often available for customers to be able to create their own applications without a lot of interference or dependency on partners like Encore to provide it. Then we're finally going to get to the Office and Microsoft 365 and how the applications within the Office family of products impact the experience that our ERP customers have. While there's quite a few Office products that Dynamics touches, the ones that seem to be the most used are Excel, Outlook, Teams, and I don't think we'll have time, but Word is another one that plays fairly prevalently into our client base. So Excel has always been kind of around as far as an export-import tool, but where we found it works really, really well and where we in Microsoft solutions kind of go to that next level, is its ability to do things like modeling out a journal entry and then cut and pasting that journal entry back into the ERP system versus what we would have had to do and what other ERP applications have to do, which is build an integration or build a data migration tool to move that type of thing back and forth. We also have this concept of editing within Excel that allows you to export filtered lists from anywhere within the ERP system and in effect do en masse changes based on that unstructured world of Excel, where maybe you can add in 10% increase in your price list for your items, and then en masse add that back into the ERP system. While you're doing that, that edit in Excel feature does things like validates the data that's going back in. So you're not writing to tables behind the scenes. You're going through the logic layer to ensure that your data is good. Next would be the Office and how you interact with your customers using Office. In many cases, those emails with customers we know are tied to individuals that are set up within your ERP system. So we're able to within the Outlook framework look up data from the email without ever having to leave the email. But it goes even a step further than that, in that we can actually update information. So and start a new sales order, enter a new purchase order, or update existing ones, again without ever leaving the email itself. A lot of efficiency there. And then finally, Teams is relatively new to the family compared to the others, but we're already starting to see how you can embed and link records from the ERP system directly into your Teams, so you can even see inventory items, their quantities within a particular team site. So these are just some high-level examples as to how you can use all of the other Microsoft tools within its product families in order to really facilitate a compared to none solution. And I think I had to kind of hurry it up there, but I think that takes up the full half hour that we had allotted for today. My contact information is down there at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. So if any of this is of interest to you and you have some more questions about it, please feel free to email me directly. Melissa, back to you.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much, Aaron. Yes, we don't have time for questions today, but definitely the contact information for Aaron is there, or contact your account manager if you have questions. So thanks again for attending the session. Thanks to Aaron for presenting. Like I said, his contact info is there, so reach out if you have any questions, and we'll see you at the next session in about 15 minutes. So thank you, everyone.